Welcome to our next edition of At Home with Holland Home. I'm Michael Loughman. I'll be hosting today along with my colleague and friend Amy Thayer, who's a senior living consultant at Raybrook Manor. Our topic today, what does assisted living really mean? We get a lot of questions about that. When people call in, what type of services are you looking for? A lot of times people don't know. People have a concept of what assisted living might be. How is it different from independent living or skilled nursing? So we're going to kind of delve into that a little bit. This will be a great resource that'll be on our website, along with all of our webinars that we've done at hollandhome.org/resources. So any of our past webinars, those are posted there. So if you're looking for additional information, we continue to build our library of webinars, which has been really a great thing. You see Amy and I's faces, but we're joined by our colleagues at Raybrook, Cindy Price, and then here at Bretton Woods, Selena Meister, Victoria Carson, and Patty Alexander. So as always, we will have opportunities for questions. So as the webinar wraps up, or during the webinar, if you have questions, type that into the Q&A box. That way, Amy and I can see them. Please don't type it into chat. It's very hard to kind of manage both places. So type those questions into Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer all of those at the end. Our webinar next month in March is going to be talking about flexibility and choice. And so look for an email on that coming out. It'll be late March. And then we'll have an in-person event in April talking about downsizing, because that's something that everybody's interested in. So, let's go ahead and get started with the topic at hand. What does assisted living really mean? I've already kind of introduced Amy, but Amy Thayer. Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been at Holland Home and your background, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Sure. I have a background in counseling psychology that has come in handy in my role. I have been at Holland Home for about 10 and a half years, a little over 9.5 years in my current role as a senior living consultant, which is a fancy way of saying I do assisted living and memory care assisted living sales and admissions for the Raybrook campus.
Well, great. And we're glad to have you on our team. So thanks for that. So talk to us a little bit about when we say assisted living, people have all these kind of different things in there that come to mind. It may be kind of what maybe they throwbacks from what was happening 20, 30 years ago, but can you talk to us, what is real assisted living like, really?
Assisted living is just that. It's assistance. It is not total care. It is assistance based on what a person's personal needs are. So it's very tailor-made to the person, and it's intended so that we can enhance a person's quality of life in areas where maybe they are struggling. For example, some people might be doing well at home, but families noticing, or the person themselves is noticing they're struggling with their medication management, or meals are becoming too difficult, excuse me. Or perhaps a person is starting to need help with dressing or bathing. We can offer all of those things in assisted living. And again, it's meant to enhance that person's quality of life so they can spend time doing things that matter to them and not have to worry about those daily activities that are more of a challenge.
Yeah, great. So, I mean, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but assisted living, talk to us a little bit about who's an ideal person, like situation for, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but who's really who is it ideal for assisted living to be kind of a place for living?
The ideal person for assisted living is someone who is perhaps struggling a bit more in their home environment to where it's not safe for a variety of reasons, or perhaps they're feeling a sense of isolation. Perhaps they've been widowed, maybe there aren't children at home or nearby, or the children are busy and they recognize that, their adult children have their own lives to lead, and they're needing just a little bit more throughout the day or evening that they're not getting in their home environment. So we want to strive to offer that with different levels of care here in assisted living.
That's great. So in your time at Raybrook Manor, now 9.5, going on 10 years, what effect have you seen on people as they move into assisted living? Perhaps now they've got 3 square meals a day, they have some socialization and community. What kind of impact have you seen that it's had on the quality of life?
I think overall we see that it's a positive impact. People, if they're being honest, will say, I maybe should have done this years ago. Um, it's a benefit to them to come to where there is community, where there is the offering of 3 meals a day. There's medication management, just being with other people, being in a supportive environment can really enrich those later years for people.
That's great. That's great. Well, and that's kind of fun to see, right? Of some
It
of the
is.
work that you're doing, and it does have impact on quality of life. So,
It really does. I was watching some residents on Monday. Um, there's just a little circle of friends, and they were out for a stroll in the building. And then I heard one of them say to another, "Okay, now we're going to go outside for a little bit. It's a really nice day. We need to get some of that fresh air." And it was a group of 3 or 4 ladies who all had their walkers, and they were out for a spin together. So there is that sense of community.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so we at Holland Home have both regular assisted living and then memory care assisted living. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about what are some of those key differences? We'll talk about staff ratios and some of that stuff coming up, but how would you describe the difference between regular assisted living and memory care assisted living?
When I meet with people, and if there's a question about, I'm not sure if my loved one needs regular assisted living or if they really need a memory care setting, one of the points that I try to highlight is regular assisted living is more self-driven. That is for the person who still can orient themselves throughout their day. They might benefit from some reminders simply because they're preoccupied and doing something else.
Hmm.
So of course our staff come around and knock at their door when it's mealtime and different things like that, or when there's an activity happening. Regular assisted living is good for someone who, in between those periods of time, can manage their life pretty well. Memory care might be indicated when we have a person who comes to the staff frequently and says, "What do I do now? Did we eat yet? Have I had breakfast?" Or perhaps the person who's eaten breakfast and goes back to their room and then 5 or 10 minutes later comes down to the dining room again and says, "When is breakfast?" Um, we look at memory care placements when we're seeing a desire to exit. We call it exit seeking or elopement, when people are leaving but really don't maybe have a great purpose for that, or it would not be safe and in their best interest. Um, or if we're seeing behaviors that perhaps aren't a great fit with regular assisted living, someone whose filters have lapsed and they're doing things that are better in a setting with others who also have dementia.
Okay, great. Um, Share with us a little bit about what does a day in assisted living, what does that look like?
Sure. So residents can wake up on their own. Many times residents want to come to breakfast when breakfast is served. So staff will come to their room, knock on the door, let them know that breakfast is going to be starting. If they need assistance with dressing or using the bathroom, we offer that. After the breakfast meal, there are generally 2 or 3 morning activities that are offered. And so our life enrichment staff, those are the activity staff, will come around and invite them. After that, we're usually gearing up for lunch. And again, our care staff will come around and let them know that it's lunchtime. There are typically 1 or 2 activities in the afternoon. And again, they would be invited to those. And then there is the supper meal, the nighttime meal. And occasionally we have activities in the evening as well, perhaps a concert or some sort of special event. So throughout the day, various staff have these touch points with residents where they are seeing them, they're coming in, making their bed, emptying their trash, gathering their laundry, etc.
And what I'm hearing you say, and we touched on this a little bit when we were chatting the other day about the flexibility that there is based on really what the like kind of resident-centered care. I mean, if not everybody wants to get up and go to breakfast, like that's fine. There's ways to work around that. Can you talk about some of that flexibility and that resident-centered care approach?
Certainly. So breakfast is a good example because we have people who don't want to have to be up early for an 8 o'clock hot breakfast. So they can, some people choose to have breakfast in their rooms, have their tray brought to them. Others will say, you know what, I just let me sleep and come get me when it's lunchtime. And they maybe perhaps skip breakfast altogether. Or many residents keep a refrigerator in their room and a little coffee maker, and so they can kind of take care of breakfast on their own.
That's great. So what I love hearing about that is that it's not like a rigid thing where if you want to sleep in, there's ways to make sure things are taken care of. So that's great. I know we had talked in the past a little bit about, maybe needing help with activities of daily living, or what we internally call ADLs and things. And you were talking, which was such a sweet way of approach of someone that maybe wants to have maybe it takes them an hour to get dressed, and some people really want to still do that and other people don't. Can you talk a little bit about the flexibility we have there in like that approach?
Sure. So before anyone moves into assisted living, our staff conduct an assessment to determine that person's level of care. We have 5 levels of care in regular assisted living, 4 levels within memory care assisted living. So during that assessment, we look at how a person is performing those ADLs, activities of daily living. And those are bed mobility, which has to do with whether a person can, sit up, lay back down, roll over, reposition themselves on their own, or if they need help. Transfers would be getting up from a chair or on and off a toilet, things like that. We look at how they're getting around, if they're needing an assistive device, and if so, do they know how to operate it? Are they operating it properly? Or are they needing some assistance, perhaps someone pushing them in a wheelchair? We find out if they're needing any help with dressing. Um, we find out if they're needing any assistance at mealtime. Some folks need their food cut up for them, or they need just us supervising a little bit because maybe they've had a history of choking. And we look at how they're performing hygiene. So if they need any assistance with that. What Michael was alluding to, I've sat with people and have said, now, do you need any help with dressing? And I've had multiple people over the years say to me, well, I can do it, but it's pretty slow. It might take me an hour. And so my follow-up question is usually, well, if there was help available, would you like assistance with that? Or do you still want to do that on your own? I can respect that people want to do things for themselves and stay as independent as possible. I dare say I think I'll be one of those people. We want to offer help for safety reasons, and if they want the help so that rather than taking an hour to dress, perhaps they take that hour to read a book that they enjoy or visit with a friend. So there's flexibility in what we offer, with, of course, safety being first and foremost.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So when that assessment is done in trying to determine the different levels of care that are needed, there's a standard assessment tool, right, that's used by the
Correct.
nurse manager, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be the nurse manager
Mhm. And then
from
that's,
whichever, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
It would be a nurse manager from whichever care area we had identified as the appropriate location.
Yeah.
That assessment also includes data on that we gather in talking with the person about their medical needs and possibly behavioral needs. So number of medications might impact how many points a person gets on their assessment. Behaviors, medical conditions. Generally speaking, the more staff involvement that's necessary, that tends to garner more points on the assessment. The higher the points, the higher a person's level of care. But we talk through that with the person, and I generally go through an overview of that assessment tool when I am meeting with people coming to assisted living or their families, because I'm a firm believer in the fact that that shouldn't be just some magical, oh, if I say you're care level 3, okay, I should be able to describe why exactly that is. And I can talk people through it.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Um, One of the key differentiators I think Holland Home has when it comes to assisted living is our approach to staff ratios. Can you speak a little bit about that, about how, what our ratio, staff to resident is like, and how that's really different than maybe some of our peer communities?
Happy to. And forgive me as I consult my paper for this. What I will say at the outset is that Holland Home consistently has staffing ratios that are better. They're over and above the industry standard. That is something that we have been committed to. My entire time here, I could say the same thing, that this has been a consistent theme for Holland Home, that we feel that we need to have staffing ratios that are over and above just the bare minimum required by our license. Our license, interestingly enough, does not dictate that there are nurses in assisted living. I'm going to say that again. Our license does not require that there are nurses in assisted living. And I think that's pretty shocking to most of us when we hear that. Holland Home has said, while that may be the minimum standard, we're not comfortable with that. We do believe that nurses are needed in assisted living and in memory care assisted living. In a regular assisted living setting, our day and evening ratio would be 1 staff for approximately 10 residents. On the overnight, it's typically 1 to 30. Of course, most people are sleeping, but there's a float then who travels between the 3 floors of assisted living to provide help if staff are going on breaks and so forth, so that we have adequate coverage. In our memory care units, the staffing during the day and evening is typically somewhere from 1 to 6 to 1 to 8. And then overnights will vary a bit because we have some small memory care units and we have a larger memory care unit. But we're always factoring into account having staff on hand at night and having a person who can float so that they can cover breaks.
Great. Well, I think so a bit mind blowing that the license doesn't require nurses. And I know that some of our peer communities don't subscribe. I mean, they don't have nurses in assisted living, which seems mind boggling to me, but
It boggles our minds too, because we're seeing people come in, people are staying home longer. They're coming in more and more frail. with a variety of medical conditions. And we just simply feel that having nurses on staff, that's a better way to be able to help meet people's needs.
Yeah. And that leads perfectly into my next question is that you alluded to it, that people stay home longer and a lot of people wait too long to come into assisted living. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what some of the challenges become because of that, of them waiting too long?
Sure. Everyone wants to be independent as long as possible, right? I don't think assisted living is typically on anybody's wish list for what they want in life. It can be a pretty hard sell, but by staying home too long and coming in too frail or too cognitively challenged because of dementia, too progressed, I think people do themselves a disservice by having less ability then to assimilate into this new environment, less ability to really partake in what we have to offer and have time to join this community that we try to have be as vibrant as possible with the very many needs that are here. So there is a tipping point where people are waiting too long and then they're here for a shorter period of time before either passing or moving to nursing. We would like to have them with us a little longer.
Right. Or come into assisted living. Sometimes they wait too long and they have to do a direct admission into skilled nursing. So
Correct.
of course there's always some factor of payment. So can you talk to our listeners and people watching the webinar about how does assisted living get paid for? Talk about the rates and that kind of thing.
Sure. So assisted living is private pay. Now, Holland Home promises life care. That has been our ongoing theme and who we are since our inception. We promise life care. People do have to meet financial requirements to come into assisted living, but then once they are here, should they get to a point where they've exhausted their resources, we are not going to ask them to leave. So the entrance fee for assisted living is $5,000. That is what buys that promise of life care. And then to financially qualify for assisted living, a person needs to simply show through their bank statements or their investment statements, their income, etc. They show us that they have the means to support at least 36 months, so 3 years, times the cost of the level of care at which they enter. So if I enter at a care level 2 and I'm going into a smaller studio, that cost is $5,790 a month. So I would have to show that I could afford at least 36 times that. For anyone whose finances are on the more limited range, this is another example of how some people wait too long to come into assisted living. And I've seen people actually price themselves out of being able to come because their needs are greater, their level of care is greater, and then they can't meet the 36-month requirement of the cost.
Well, that's another great reason why to come in while, your care level is a little lower. So a great point. So you talked about that rate. What would be included in the rate, the monthly rate at assisted living?
Sure. So let me just start by saying care level 1 here, we consider independent plus meals. Care level 1 is a bit more of an a la carte situation for the most part. So I'm going to talk more about care levels 2 through 5 and what's included. At all care levels, however, there are 3 meals a day offered. We have a pull cord and a push button in the room so that people can summon help, and everyone has access to activities. At care levels 2 through 5, We offer medication administration, and we also handle the reordering of those medications for the resident. We are kind of the go-between between that person's doctor and the resident, and helping line up any sort of care that they might need. At care levels 2 through 5, we are checking on people throughout the night, every couple of hours. Again, we have those touch points during the day with staff. During the overnight, we want to make sure that we're laying eyes on people. We don't have to wake them, but we're just checking in and making sure that all is well. Housekeeping is included in the rate. Laundry is included in the rate. We have a laundry contract with Sheldon Cleaners here in town, and they provide a wash, dry, and fold service, which goes out 3 times a week and is coming back 3 times a week. So there's a nice rotation for people. We always have snacks on hand. We have access to cable TV, about 100 channels. Oh gosh. I mentioned snacks. Snacks are important. Yeah, I think that's about all.
Yeah. Can you describe for us what a typical room or rooms are like in assisted living?
Sure. So our rooms, by and large, what I have the most of are studio units. I have 4 different sizes of studio units here, and then I have 2 different sizes of what we call suites, which would be a 2-room unit, typically set up with 1 room as a bedroom and 1 as the living room. All the rooms will have their own private bathroom. In regular assisted living, the bathroom will be sink, toilet, and shower. In a memory care assisted living room, the private bathroom will be toilet and sink, and residents go to a tub or a shower room, or what we call the spa room, for assistance with bathing or shower. The rooms themselves are basically a blank slate, because we know that people want to have some of their own things around them. That's familiar, that's a comfort. So people can decorate them really as they wish. They can hang things on the wall, have their comfy furniture with them, and we really encourage that.
That's great. So if someone wanted to come into assisted living, what's the admissions process like?
So the first step would be reaching out to me to kind of discuss needs, and then set up a time when I could meet with you and walk you through what assisted living looks like, talk about that level of care assessment, maybe get a rough idea where they or their loved one's level of care is. And then if a person wants to fill out an application for assisted living, that is $100 that's non-refundable, to put their name on a waiting list. And even if I have immediate openings, we still have that application fee of $100. It's more or less a processing fee. And when I receive an application, that gives that person their place in line for a particular accommodation, with the understanding that current Holland Home residents, those who are living in independent living and need to transition to assisted or to memory care assisted, they would always have priority over someone from the outside.
That's great. And do you have openings right now?
I do. I have openings in regular assisted living and openings in memory care assisted living.
Okay. And those would be the studios, not the suites.
Correct. I do have a suite in memory care available,
Okay.
but by and large, what I have right now are studios. Suites usually have a little bit longer waiting time, simply because I have fewer of them.
Sure. Before we get to the questions from our audience, is there anything you want to add, anything we missed that would be important to know?
I think many people are hesitant to even pursue finding out about assisted living. It can feel overwhelming. I want to reassure people that, particularly at Holland Home, this is not about the hard sell. We want what's best for the people walking through the door. Many times I work with the prospective resident themselves or their family members for a number of years. So it can take a while. We're not just trying to pack the building and get people through the doors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, that's where the mission of Holland Home really um comes into play. So
Absolutely.
okay, great. So we do have some questions that we'll get to here. And if people have more, just type them in there and we'll do our best to get to every one of them. The first question came really early in our webinar, and I think we've answered it. What is meant by the five levels of care of assisted living? I think we touched on that after this question was written. So I'm going to mark that we've answered that, Norwin. And if you need more clarification, ask us. Again, we'll be happy to answer it.
I'll jump in very quickly, if I may.
Sure.
Um, so our 5 levels of care, we're really creative in our naming of them. It's level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The higher the level, the more help that we are providing.
Okay.
And again, that is determined by that assessment tool that we use, by the medical information we gather, etc.
Yeah. Here's a good question. What if one spouse is needing assisted living, but not the other one?
That's a great question. So because our care level 1 is considered that independent plus meals, if we have a spousal or a partner situation where one person really doesn't need care, then typically we would consider them a care level 1. We bill people according to their level of care and their room size. So if we have spouses occupying a suite, we kind of look at that suite as 2 single rooms put together. So we would bill the more independent person at that level 1 rate for their size single room. And we would bill their spouse or partner at that person's level of care and the rate for their size of the room.
Yeah, great. Are the fees the same as you quoted if you are entering from Holland Home Independent Living?
Yes, they are. However, someone entering from Holland Home Independent Living will not pay the entrance fee of $5,000, nor do they have to show a commitment of 36 months ability to pay, because they were already qualified financially and already had an entrance fee when they bought into independent living.
Yeah. Now they do get a reduced rate in skilled nursing. Holland Home residents would pay less in Holland Home residents would pay less in skilled nursing than maybe somebody coming in from the outside. So that's where there is a little different. There's a little bit of a discounted rate for Holland Home residents that comes into play in skilled nursing. So
it also comes into play if someone from the community is contacting us about a respite stay in assisted living. Someone in the community would pay a little bit more for respite than a Holland Home person.
mm-hmm. Can 2 people be in a studio?
Depending on the studio size, another great question. So our license has minimum square footage requirements. So 2 of my studio units are big enough that 2 people can occupy them. 2 of the studio units are not large enough to have double occupancy.
Great. Good. What assisted living is available at Bretton Woods campus? What is an admission fee and monthly fee range for assisted living care? Do you want me to take that or you want to take it?
You go ahead.
Okay, you add to it. So at Bretton Woods, there's 45 beds here at Bretton Woods in assisted living. And that has just been filled traditionally with Holland Home or Bretton Woods residents. So we really haven't taken outside admissions into those 45 beds. So there's really not an application fee or anything like that because we're just not taking people from the community at Bretton Woods. Bretton Woods has 45 beds. We have 236 at Raybrook. So you can see where we would take more community members in. The most recent, I know the person's asking this question, the most recent disclosure statement we gave you has all of the rates in it. I don't know those rates off the top of my head, but you'll see those rates in the disclosure statement we gave you. And if you need them updated, we can certainly get that to you. Do people generally just stay in their, first of all, do you have anything to add to that, Amy?
No,
Okay.
that was good.
Okay, good. The next question here, do people generally just stay in their rooms or do they get out and about, enjoy activities in their life?
Good question. That is a mix. We have people who really don't leave their rooms much other than meal times. We have people who attend nearly every activity. So it's based on personal preference. And I would say that's very true in regular assisted living. Now, in a memory care assisted living setting, we really do try to get people engaged. Obviously, we cannot force people to come to activities, but there is more of an intentional invitation saying, hey, Sarah, we've got a baking activity coming up. Why don't you come join us? And guiding that person to the activity.
Great. This next question, do people sign up for assisted living if living there already before they have evidence of future needs? So I think this person is asking if you're a Holland Home resident and in independent living, do you sign up for assisted living?
Some people do, yes. Some people have heard that I have for a while I had a bit of a wait list in assisted living. And so people were reaching out and saying, I don't think I have a need yet, but I just kind of want my name on the list. So that name stays in front of me as someone who might have a need. People can be on the waiting list as active, meaning, be on the lookout for a room for me, or inactive. I'm not ready yet, but I just kind of want my name floating out there in space as someone who may be thinking about it in the future.
Great. And next question, do I need an assessment to be on the waiting list?
No, not to be on the waiting list. When we conduct that assessment is when a person has said, yep, I'm ready to make the move. And we've identified that there is a room available and we're moving forward with the actual admission. That's when we would gather information from that person's doctor, because our license does require that we have a physical that is no more than 90 days old at the time of admission. So we get that medical information from a person's doctor that helps inform us about them. And then our staff would meet with them to conduct our assessment to determine level of care.
Great. And here's a good question. Are the nurses who are employed RNs, LPNs, or question mark?
Good question. So in assisted living, we generally utilize LPNs. The 3 unit managers in our regular assisted living are all LPNs. We have some LPNs in memory care assisted living as well. In skilled nursing is where you will find RNs as well as LPNs, certified nurse assistants. What I tell people is in skilled nursing, there's a higher acuity, so there's a little bit higher level of training. And again, there would be higher staffing ratios there.
Great. Next 2 questions I'm going to merge because they're both about respite care. Can you discuss respite care a little bit more, please?
So respite care is something we offer. Respite is considered a short-term stay. Our minimum length of stay is 7 days. Maximum typically 45. A person pays upfront. So again, we would have conducted an assessment before they come to us so that we know what sort of help they're needing. And a person will pay upfront for their length of stay. The rooms are kind of furnished almost like a motel room. So those rooms will come with a bed, a dresser, a recliner, a TV. Some of the respite rooms have a phone in them, some do not. We cannot guarantee phones. They will usually have a lamp or two. So just some basic items of furniture. Certainly people can bring more if they wish. And again, we consider those short-term stays. We have to go through the same process for a respite stay where we are doing that assessment. We are gathering that physical. Again, we have to have a physical. So respite is not like showing up to the Holiday Inn and saying, hey, I need a room tomorrow. We do need advance notice for a respite stay.
Okay. And the last question I'm seeing in our Q&A is, you've mentioned activities. Are those part of the vibrant living model?
They are, yes. All of our life enrichment staff work within our vibrant living activity model, where we are touching on physical, emotional, spiritual, all of the different areas of activities and care.
Yeah. Social, intellectual.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of them.
I
So
was blanking. Thank you.
yeah, I'm glad to see I'm not the only one. But yeah, I would certainly think that if been in assisted living, in the facility, and I would certainly describe it, especially for something with higher care needs, as vibrant is a really good word to use to describe it. And we're proud of that. So
We are.
yeah. So
The activities may look different between independent living and assisted living because, of course, we're taking into account generally more needs physically or cognitive changes. So it's not the same activity calendar as someone would have in independent living, but we are proud of our activities and we do really want to try and keep people engaged for their own benefit.
sure, that's wonderful. Well, as we wrap up, Amy, anything else you want to add at all?
I don't think so. There were great questions. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, they were really good questions. So we thank you for joining us. I'll look to see if any other questions pop in here at the last minute, but thanks for your attention. We know that there's a lot of questions about what assisted living is. Hopefully this webinar has helped to answer some of those things. And stay tuned for upcoming webinars. You can always check those out on our website at hollandhome.org. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in,
everyone.
everybody. Take care.
Thank you.